Hello and welcome to another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness, a first responder mental health podcast. I'm your host, Erin Jane, and today I am joined by Kenny Mitchell Jr. Kenny is a former firefighter with over 22 years experience on the job, primarily at the Chesterfield County Fire Department, and he retired only this past April 2024 as a lieutenant. He's the founder of Operation Yellow Tape, which is an organization empowering first responders and encouraging them to build upon their strength, resilience, and hope. They also have their third annual conference coming up in September, which I'm looking forward to hearing lots about. And their mission is dedicated to breaking the stigma around mental health and the struggles that are faced by many in the first responder profession and community. They offer education, resources, and support. And Kenny is also a keynote speaker, a coach. He teaches Mayday and RIT training. And he has his own podcast also called Operation Yellow Tape. So thank you for joining me today, Kenny. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I am honored to be here. I'm glad our schedules lined up and we can make it happen.
I know. Kenny and I were just chatting quickly offline, and it's third time was the charm for us today. So
Yes.
we are excited to jump into it. And I think we've been sort of circling each other a little bit on social media, so it's great to be able to jump on it and have a chat. I would love to hear about your journey into being a first responder because, you know, my secret little sources tell me that it was not actually your first career intention.
No, you've done your recon. That's good. So yeah, I went to college and got a bachelor's degree in graphic design and imaging technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I landed my first job as a graphic designer with the Virginia Pilot newspaper.
Wow.
And for about the first 2 years after graduating, I was assigned to Nags Head, North Carolina.
Okay.
The beach, the Outer Banks.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So I had an ocean view office and a couple folks. Well, like we all do, I wanted more and I got promoted and it landed me in Norfolk, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
So to make a long story short, I spent about 6.5 years in corporate America as a graphic designer working with sales reps and companies to design their marketing, their logos.
Okay.
And on one horrific Tuesday, over 3,000 people were tragically killed on September 11th. And to be honest, I've said it on podcasts before, I've said it on stages before, it changed the direction of my life and my career. Like so many other people, joined the military, did professions. I immediately started applying in the fire services. I looked at police, looked at military. But yeah, that was my first career, was in corporate America. But 9/11, 100% is the reason why I went. I have no firefighters in my family.
Yeah.
I do have a police officer who was an uncle who's passed, but I'm not generational firefighting, knew nothing about it. But yeah, that day changed, that Tuesday changed my whole life and the whole direction up until this point.
Yeah, and that's incredible. And you're definitely not, you know, the first person I've spoken to either in general or on this podcast that have had that really like visceral response in the way that it sounds like you had to, you know, that attack on your country in that way. And I think it is one of those defining moments in our lifetimes that, you know, I know like my mom talks about like, you know, Kennedy assassination and when Elvis died and all that kind of thing. And that's definitely one of those ones for our generation too.
Yeah, I remember that day because I was leaving a physical and I walked into the apartment, and as I turned on the television, there was all kind of stuff on the radio. I thought it was a hoax on the radio. Like
Really?
there's this guy called Mancow who was talking about something. So I turned the radio off. But when I turned my television on before I went back to work, I was on my lunch break still. I actually saw the second plane hit the tower. Yeah. I mean, and right there on my television in real time, and went to work. And of course, at the newspaper, it's on all the big television. So every single day, I just watched this recovery and watched it at home. And it did something to me. And I'm glad. I wouldn't change anything. But that day is burned in all of our minds for folks that are my age who have seen it happen.
Yeah, I was on the opposite side of the world watching exactly the same thing. I was 16 years old and up late. So if it was your Tuesday morning, it was would it have been our Monday night, or
Monday
might have been
night.
our Tuesday night or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. And yeah, I watched like the second plane fly in live and the towers fall, and it's still, I mean, how many years later, and it's still it still feels so impactful, and not just because I live here now and we only just ceased the war that resulted from it and all
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But yeah, it's incredible that it really just completely shifted like the entire course of your life in that respect too.
Yeah. And it's still taking the lives of people. People are dying of illnesses, of
Yeah.
cancers,
Yeah.
pizza business owners every day, people who weren't even first responders who breathed all that stuff in. And
Yeah.
to this day, it's every single rescue dog is dead. It's killing so many people, and it probably
Yeah.
will for 50, 60 to 100 more years.
Yeah, yeah, and you're exactly right. Like that the tragic aftermath of not just the people who died on that day, injuries resounding from it, the trauma involved, and then like and I think it was it John Stewart who went to Congress and was fighting for the rights for the first responders who attended that day to have insurance coverage basically,
Right.
to receive treatment, all that kind of stuff, and so. What in particular about, like you said, you looked at the military, you looked at police department and fire department. What was it about the fire department that sort of made you go, that's the right one?
I think it could have been the fact that 343 of them lost their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But I also wanted to get in the fight immediately. The fight meaning
Yeah.
to help my community. And I knew, even as a younger guy, that I wanted a family. And selfishly, I thought deploying constantly would have me all over the earth. And
Yeah.
how can I give back to my community and to the folks who I love, and to show honor to these men and women
Mm-hmm.
who we lost? So
Yeah.
that's why I chose the fire department. I knew I wanted a family. I knew I wanted to be local, but the military was right there. I'd met with people too to sign that dotted line. But
Yeah.
I think those 343 really, they're on my wall right there. All 343 of them.
Yeah.
That was a driving factor. Is I want to jump in that fight from the um, first responder boots and go at it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. No, I love that it's such a tragedy, but it became something so powerful for you out of that. Like, I think that's lovely. And so I also know that you sort of joined like the peer support program within your fire department in roughly sort of like 2009. Was that before or after you became a lieutenant?
You definitely have done some recon.
I,
That's good.
I was a detective in a former life, Kenny.
That's
It
yeah. I
comes in
should have,
handy.
I should remember that. No, it was well before becoming a lieutenant.
Okay.
I joined the fire service in 2002 and got on the peer support team in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined that team and was heavily involved until
Yeah.
2024, and I'm still heavily involved in peer support
Mm-hmm.
teams and stuff. But no, I joined in '09.
Yeah. And so what was it about it that sort of like you felt that pull and that draw? Was there something that you were either noticing like about yourself at the time or about any of your colleagues that you were like, I feel like I need to contribute in this way?
That's a really good question. And it's when I tell people this, I think sometimes they think I'm making the story up. I started to see, even in 2009, I started to see people that were struggling. I started seeing a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of divorced men, a bunch of men who were having infidelity problems, women firefighters who were kind of scarce back then, but
Mm-hmm.
they were struggling. People's sleep was struggling. And
Yeah.
I remember about that time period, I started to think about some of the calls I was running, and it started to affect me a little bit. I remember thinking about them,
Mm-hmm.
remembering them. And I truly, honestly joined the peer support team, not knowing a whole lot about what it offered. I just thought to myself, maybe I can get involved and I can teach myself some tools about how to handle this job, because Kenny, I think one day this job's going to hit you in the face, and I
Yeah.
think you're going to feel it, and you're going to need somebody and something to hold on to. And honestly, it's why I joined at first, was to kind of help myself, and then it turned into, wow, this is a amazing way to help other people and to relate to people
Mm-hmm.
by joining this peer support team and taking all the classes and training. But I'm honest when I say that I saw this snowball of men being divorced and bad drinking problems and very, very overweight and angry and irritated and just explosive type people. And I thought to myself, I came from corporate America and I didn't always see that. Now I'm seeing it here. There's something to this. And it was a time frame people weren't talking about it in '09 about
Yeah.
mental health. And not that I had this crystal ball and thought there'd be mental health awareness all over the place in the 2000s, but I saw something and I felt this energy of this is a rough job, a hard job, and
Yeah.
people are suffering in silence. And I leaned towards the peer support team and did it for 15, 16 plus years and continue to do it still.
Yeah. And that's wonderful. And I think it was actually sounds, given everything you kind of just talked about, almost like very sort of forward leaning from your fire department at the time to even have a peer support, like established group, in that respect.
Chesterfield is amazing. We have over a 57-person peer support team.
Wow.
It's very proactive. If a
Mm-hmm.
call comes out that's horrific, we
Mm.
will be notified, and we'll have the opportunity to contact that station, contact
Mm-hmm.
go through the chain of command and
Yeah, of
see if
course.
anyone needs anything.
Yeah.
We just don't bombard the station if people don't need us, but
Yeah.
we're very proactive. There's more we can do, of course. There's a whole lot more, and there's some changes I think we can make to make things better, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
that didn't happen before I left. But it's still a very proactive peer support team with men and women. We have people on our team who are not in emergency services. They're in the admin
Mm-hmm.
part,
Yep.
because they see things too. They hear things too.
Yeah.
So it's a great mix, and I was fortunate to be part of that peer team. And Virginia Beach had the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've been blessed to be part of two very large organizations that are taking, in my opinion, mental health as serious as they can. We can do better, and I have my opinions on how we can do better.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we'll get there, maybe we won't. But we're doing a good job compared to some departments who don't have the resources to pull off a 57-person team.
Yeah, and it is. It's sort of like one of the largest I've ever heard of, and
Yeah.
I think as well, like I joined the police force. I was 22, and it was '07 I joined, and how like you say that you were seeing things, and it was, like turning the cogs in your head, kind of going like something's going on, like. I look back now, I was like a baby, but I was watching, like I got paired as like a 22-year-old with like men in their late 30s, early 40s, been on the job 20 years. And there was a heaviness and an anger and rage to a lot of these people that I worked with. And I didn't understand it at the time. And I can look back in hindsight now, and it's awful because most of them are divorced, most of them are out of the job, most of them have had significant struggles with mental health, with addiction, with all that kind of thing. And it's just like, granted, we didn't know sort of any better back then, but it's still sort of tragic, the toll that it takes on those people. And especially, like you're saying, people from your vintage, like, didn't always feel comfortable talking about the shit that you see. You just go
No.
down the pub and have a few beers and fucking forget about it. Like,
Yeah.
and that's not the healthiest way to deal with it.
No, it's not. It is a job that few understand, and your husband is lucky to have you because you've been in the boots and it. But it is a job that is very tough. The
Yeah.
things that you see and do and smell and you're around, it's just not normal to see somebody's insides on the outsides and to see the things that we deal with. It will change you in ways that you don't see coming. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm pushing so hard in the lane I'm in right now to get in front of families and firefighters who are going to start this journey, and those who are in the middle of it now. It's never too late to turn that corner and feel good. So I love this profession. I bleed the fire service. I want my last breath to be trying to help my brothers and sisters in these lanes. But you've got to want to help yourself.
Yeah.
You've got to want to realize this job is going to change you, whether you think it's going to or not. So yeah, I agree. We all saw some of this coming.
Yeah, definitely. And it's definitely sort of one thing that I'm a big fan and advocate for, which, and it sounds like, a lot of your organization, it's about being, it's not just sticking a Band-Aid on it after it's all happened. It's about being proactive and about being preventative. And I sound like a broken record about that, but that's what it is. And even with my like psychology studies right now, it's like, if we just give them the tools, like as part of when they go through the police academy, the fire academy, like, becoming a paramedic, like whatever it is, when you give them those resources and give them the tools to go, you know what, you might be totally fine throughout your whole career, but
Yeah.
just in case you're not, here is this option, here is this option, here is this practice, here is this tool. And so at least they have like a starting point instead of finding themselves in crisis and then being, what the hell do I do from here?
And you can't say that loud enough about being proactive. I played
Mm-hmm.
college baseball. I played sports my whole life. And
Mm-hmm.
anybody who watches sports, any NFL team, these men and women that do these sports, they start out in, their shorts, and then their shoulder pads and their helmets. They start off before they get the game
Yeah.
going and the practices going and the off season. And I kind of visualize that in the fire service, how we need to start off with some of these tools and some of this
Yeah.
training as these men and women get started, to
Mm.
bring them aware of what they're going to see, and then how can they cope with it, and how do you talk to your family about it, and how do you not talk to your family. And
Mm.
we are industrial style athletes. When you come, you have to work really hard for 30 minutes. I mean, in the fire service,
Oh,
you got to get it going for a good 30, 35 minutes. So they call us industrial athletes for a reason, but yet
yeah.
the muscle that is used the most is our brain, and it's the least that we train on for some reason. We train on Mayday, we train on RIT, we train on some things that may never happen. I hope they
Mm.
don't. Sometimes they do. But I can tell you what will always happen in this profession is you will always have depression at some point. You will have hypervigilance. You will get yourself worried about something. You will have these irritability outbursts. That will 100% happen in your career. You may never see somebody's calls you train for. You should still train for them. Don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong. We have to be ready for them, but we don't train our brains and have the classes enough that we should in the fire service.
Yeah, very much so. And it's something that I don't know if they talk about in the fire service like as much, but when you're a cop, a big thing they hammer home to you is muscle memory. So it's like if I'm, wrestling with a crook or something like that, I need to know where all my options are. I need to know where my cuffs are, where my spray is, where my gun is, without even having to have that like cognitive function to know about it. And it's like, but like you're saying, they miss that the mental health aspect of like, oh, like I'm feeling really anxious, or I'm noticing I'm really angry every time I'm showing up to work, like, and being able to kind of have that muscle memory to go, oh, maybe I'm struggling in a way that I'm not like, cognitively aware of, but maybe everyone else around me is. And maybe I need to like take a day off, go for a walk, go for a jog, go to the beach, dunk my head in the ocean, like any of
Yes.
those sort of options that, are going to work for everyone. And so, yeah, so I think you just told me, what year did you become a lieutenant again?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
And what year was that?
2016
Okay.
or 17. Whatever.
around there.
Yeah, around that time frame. Right.
And now having I didn't know my husband before he became a lieutenant. We met when he was a lieutenant, but I've been with him since he became a captain. I have a very strong understanding of how onerous the study is to become a lieutenant or a captain. What made you kind of go, now's the time, I want to step into that lane?
I've always enjoyed the team aspect of things, and I believe you learn a lot from. You learn a lot from every one of your leaders, but I think you learn the most from those who aren't always the best, who don't always lead the crew like you think they should. And for me, I decided that I wanted to step into the role and take some of the things I've learned from some really great leaders and lieutenants, and I wanted to help some of the newer guys coming up, newer women coming up in the fire service.
Yeah.
I just wanted to take that first step in leadership and lean into the lieutenant's position. I loved it. It was, to me, besides Besides driving the engine, riding the front
Mm.
seat was one of the best spots there is in the fire service.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think, yeah, there's definitely something to be said for that amazing crew dynamic. And like you said, you can learn just as much of what not to do, or you go, yeah, I didn't like that. I know that when I'm up, I'm going to handle that better, and I'm going to handle that differently. And it's not necessarily a blight on them, but it's like a personal preference. You kind of like, and you just clock it and you put it away, and you're like, I'm going to do it differently
Yeah,
when
and
it's
I
my
think as
turn.
an officer too, you have an opportunity to see the department from a different lens. A lot of times you sit back as a firefighter. Not, I mean, we're all leaders, but you sit back and you kind of clock in and you clock out, and you complain about this and you complain about that. Well, you really don't see the big picture of what's going on above you with the chief levels and all that they're
Mm-hmm.
doing to try to make the organization better. And I think as an officer, you get to sit in on those meetings and you get to see the big picture, and you get to see the organization through a different lens. And that's really good for people
Mm-hmm.
like me, because I was one of those guys who would do a lot of bitching sometimes and complaining, why are we doing this? Why do we have all
Yeah.
these in services? And you start to realize why we don't have what we have and how hard it is to get new apparatus. And I just think for anybody who's out there taking those steps towards becoming an officer and leading a team and seeing the department through a different lens, more of an administrative lens, it will only help you become a better firefighter, a better officer, work better with your people, understand your people more. And that's kind of what I was looking for, is just seeing the department through a different lens and being proactive with my rookies and helping them along the way, and really respecting and leaning into the senior guys. Sometimes I didn't think senior guys got the respect they wanted, senior women. And it was a multitude of reasons why I chose to go that route.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like it really suited you to a T.
It did. I
Yeah.
absolutely loved it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, and now I know, Kenny, that you in 2013, you suffered quite a significant personal loss in your life that sort of, really affected you and changed the course, perhaps of you being able to show up in the way that you might have originally thought that you would. Um, how did that loss sort of, I guess, shape you going forward, shape you as a firefighter, shape you just, as a person?
Yeah. In 2013, my life took a dramatic turn when my daughter's mother unexpectedly passed at just 34 years old. Um, People have heard the story. Myself and a police officer were the first ones to her. I administered CPR. We did all
Mm-hmm.
we could do, and she passed. To make a very long story short, she passed. My daughter was 7, and I was 10 years into my fire service career. Um, and I can tell you, it sent me down a long. I talk about it, a long 7 year, 7 years of suffering in silence. From the outside, maybe you wouldn't always see everything,
Yeah.
but I was completely ate up with depression, with survivor's guilt, with why is there a right now on my wall? I have several life saves of people who were injured a lot worse than her medical emergency. I have people who had done heroin who we saved,
Mm.
people who tried to take their life who we saved. And why couldn't I save her? Why couldn't the police officer? Why couldn't my own department that came to help? Why couldn't they? So it sent me down a very long um, path of kind of destroying everything around me, man. I was depressed as could be. I was
Mm.
anxious and angry, but then again, doing the dad thing, coaching. I
Yeah.
had to be both roles. I had
Yeah.
to step up and be a firefighter and a father and a son and all these things. And on top of that, the calls were piling on. Um, I was seeing more and more death. I'd lost a buddy, Brad Clark. Things were happening, and I couldn't slow down the snowball of trauma. My life outside the yellow tape had punched me in the teeth, and I wasn't handling it well.
Mm.
And I did not handle it well until probably 2020, when I decided to really lean into it and fix myself first, and to
Mm.
start taking a more proactive approach with me. But again, from the outside, I look like father of the year, man, coaching softballs, going to all the daddy-daughter dances and everything that you're supposed to do. But that in 2013 was the very start of a mental health decline in my life that I could not get my hands around. I was too afraid to get my hands around it. I was too afraid to talk about it. And it was a long 7 years.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for being open to share that with me today. I can't even imagine, what that loss, really triggered in you, and it's sort of very similar in terms of like my childhood. Like one of my parents died suddenly, and the other one was left to raise two little kids alone. And I think grief is so underestimated in terms of how powerful it is, and the ways in which it shows up. Everyone knows like the 7 stages or the 5 stages, or everything that they talk about, but trying to grieve this amazing person in your life, as well as then having to handle the grief of your daughter and trying to remain that safe ship in the harbor for her. I can imagine that just would have been, incredibly difficult. So what was your department like in that sense? Obviously you were very highly involved in the peer support and all that kind of thing. Did they sort of really rally around you at that time in your life?
They did. I can say for sure, had I been working anywhere else besides the fire service, I don't think, physically, mentally, emotionally, I would have made it. My daughter was able to come with me to the training division and to school bus and spend time at the training center for childcare. There were several women who worked in administration who would have her come up and help decorate the Christmas trees. And she was so heavily involved with the fire department. And the fire department rallied around me like I just can't even put words to it. It was just an amazing. But I even hid from them how bad I was feeling. I went back to work way too soon. At that time in my life, I was assigned to the training division. I was leading a recruit school, so I didn't want to let the recruit school down. But I should have taken more time off. I should have done a lot more things for myself. But to answer your question, they rallied around me. The peer support team was there. People were knocking on my door at 3:00 in the morning, asking me, "Do I need anything? What can we do?" Our charitable foundation stepped up and helped out with some financial things. I can't say enough about them and how they helped me through that period.
That's incredible to hear, and I'm really glad that you had that support at that time. And I think as well, I think first responders lean into avoidance a lot. And you can sit there and say, now I went back too soon, but I think sometimes we avoid, and the best way that we can is to put our head down and bum up and get to distract ourselves with work. And you had also sort of mentioned, obviously, that this is sort of like 7-year really traumatic and challenging time for you. Was suicidal ideation something that you sort of struggled with during that time too, as a part of your depression?
I hate to say it, but I don't I don't talk much about that even to this day, but but I knew my daughter, what would happen then. But those racing thoughts, when things got very overwhelming, um, financially, and very overwhelming emotionally and spiritually, my spirituality was done. I believed in nothing. I had some racing thoughts, but they quickly cleared and they quickly went away. But I can understand that feeling of things would be so much better if I could just stop all of this. And I was like, whoa, what are you doing? What are you saying? But I've had those happen to me. And thank goodness, I was able to burst through them and unlike so many of our brothers and sisters who we've lost, they've lost all hope
Mm.
and all mission and all passion, and they've made that decision that they can't retract. But
Yeah.
again, to answer your question, yeah, I had several of those racing thoughts, and 12 o'clock at night. They didn't last long. I didn't
Yeah.
attempt anything or do anything, but it's scary out of the blue to be cutting your grass and that thought just hits your head like you could end all this now if you really wanted, and it's frightening.
Mm. Yeah, and those like you're saying, it's frightening because it's like that, almost like an intrusive thought that you're not proactively going down the path of. But I mean, it is, and there's like evidence to suggest it is incredibly common amongst the first responder population. That suicidal ideation is something that enters our realm a lot more than people talk about. But also, like you're saying, it's not just the, oh, I'm having this thought and I want to take my life. A lot of the time, and I used to hear it on the phone. I was a crisis counselor at a suicide prevention organization. So much of it is just, I just want the pain to stop.
Yeah,
And that's kind of like where the ideation comes from. It's not just like, I want to die. It's just, I want the pain to stop. I want the difficulties to end.
yeah,
And it's still like that very complicated state to find yourself in.
yeah. It was strange for me because a lot of times it would happen during moments where at one moment you were feeling fine, and the next you were having this isolating, racing thought of just bad thoughts. So no,
Yeah.
you nailed it. If they did a true study on police and fire and military and
Mhm.
dispatchers and correction officers, they would be absolutely stunned of the men and women who are struggling with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, thank you for your honesty and speaking up about it, because I think it's important for people to hear not only that it happens, but that it doesn't have to, end in the most awful way,
Right.
you know. Um, but unfortunately, I am aware that you did lose a really close friend of yours around sort of the start of the pandemic
Mhm.
in that way. What can you tell me about him?
Yeah. In 2020, I met a very good friend of mine, Tom Showalter, who was a firefighter as well. His
Mm-hmm.
mom and dad will be at my conference in September for the second year in a
Great.
row. They
Yeah,
couldn't
that's
att- they
great.
they couldn't attend the first because of grief, but Tom
Mm.
and I met off of Interstate 95 in 2020. Um, we always did meet up together and talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that day we sat outside at a rest stop for about 5 or 6 hours. And like
Wow.
firefighters do, I can only talk to people in the turnout gear. I was struggling, like I just told you about. I was
Mm-hmm.
having hypervigilance. I was depressed. I was having worry, and I wasn't trusting anybody. I was a hurricane in my personal life, and
Yeah.
come to find out, so was he was as well, because 17 days after meeting me for that lunch, he took his life. Um, I found myself thinking to myself, what just happened here?
Yeah.
Why in the heck didn't he tell me something was wrong with him? Something was bothering him, but yet there I sat with him for almost 5 hours. We
And you
get
didn't
up and
say
we bro
anything.
hug, and he goes north and I go south. And 17 days later, he takes himself. Why didn't I lean into him and say, "Hey, man, I'm a lieutenant and I'm going through this stuff. Are you? Can you help me?" He probably would have said, "Man, I'm struggling too." Maybe he wouldn't have. I don't know. Um, but I can tell you that day was the birth of of me doing something different besides typing hearts and prayers and rest easy, brother. It was time for me to finally step up and come out of the darkness. And man,
Mm-hmm.
um, that was the turning point for me, and losing him. But he was an amazing guy. He was a wonderful firefighter. He was a wonderful friend. He was a wonderful son and husband. And it is just breaks my heart to know that he got so deep and hurt that he didn't think anyone was there, including me, who sat 2 feet away from him for 7, 6, 5 hours.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you that we can say all we want, that we only talk to our kind and we only talk to each other, but we don't. And I talk about that today on the stage. You have to dismantle that idea that you can only talk to your firefighter brothers and sisters and police and military. You have to talk to everyone and share, because that's living proof. He lives right here on my wrist for the rest of my life. We didn't talk that day either.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is really obviously tragic, and I'm so sorry for the loss of your friend, because he sounds like a really good guy. But like you're saying, you're both clearly going through something, and neither of you spoke up about it, and that's not only like the cultural and societal sort of stigma attached, as well as the first responder stigma that we don't talk about stuff. And, obviously, it sounds like that may have been, you found something beautiful in the tragedy. Like, was that the kind of inception point of Operation Yellow Tape?
Yeah, it was. At his funeral service, I was sitting at a table, and I'm a journaler. So is that a right word, journaler? I journal,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I have over 70 journals throughout my career that I've kept. And
Wow.
I had it's sitting right there. I had a napkin, and I was
Mm-hmm.
jotting down things at one of his services, because everything was outside because of COVID. We couldn't get together. It was a mess. And a person sat beside me and said, Kenny, this keeps happening because there's no one to talk to. And I turned to them and I bit their head off. I'm like, what do you mean there's nobody to talk to? There's plenty of people to talk to. Look at this crowd. There's nothing but first responders and husbands and wives and cousins and kids and there's flags on sleeves. There's plenty of people to talk to. Don't even tell me that. And they get up and they walk off. And I'm like, ooh, I didn't even talk to him when I had an opportunity. So why am I saying that? But I said, there's too many of us to even think there's nobody to talk to. So I kind of wrote it down on a piece of paper. There's too many, actually has a curse word on it, but there was too many effing of us, which I've since changed because it doesn't look good on a shirt. And then a second person sit beside me and they say, Kenny, this keeps happening because this job sucks. And I said, no, that's not true. This job is hard, and this job does beat us down, but it is life outside of these yellow tapes sometimes that hurt us. And I said it for the first time ever. I said, outside the yellow tape is where, and come to find out, he was dealing with things like relationship problems, separation problems, child custody problems, running pediatric things, financially not going well. Life outside the yellow tape will eat you up and destroy you while you work inside the yellow tape, no matter what your yellow tape is. So I jotted that down as well. And I went home that night and I said, you know what? I'm a hypocrite. All I do is talk about brotherhood and talking to each other, and there's too many. So I went on Instagram. It's somewhere on my page now, way down low. And I set my phone up. I never had Instagram before until 2020. And I started just to talk. And I was unloading about that day and talking about myself as a lieutenant. And I have hypervigilance. I have anger issues. I have irritability. I'm finding myself in my car crying and punching my steering wheel. I'm picking up my weed eater and I'm breaking my weed eater all over the place because I can't get the string on it properly. I'm toxic in relationships. I'm destroying everything that's good around me. I'm waiting for the next shoe to drop because I don't want to get close to you because you're going to die. And I was just doing all of those things, and I unloaded on Instagram, and I called it like Saturday mental health moment or something. And I just said, fuck it. And I sent it. And I went out in the front yard to cut the grass. And when I came back, there was hundreds and hundreds of people that were commenting saying, man, I feel like you feel. My wife acts just like that. My neighbor was like that. My brother, who's dead now, acted like that. My grandfather, what's going on? And it was kind of the launch moment of Operation Yellow Tape, where I decided I'm going to take this further. And rather than talking about, again, hearts and prayers and rest easy, brother and sister, I want to do something tangible and make it known that I am struggling as well. And I got to get myself off of this X and clean myself up. And then I want to start helping you. But yeah, I know I say this phrase a lot, but to answer your question, Operation Yellow Tape was born right there at one of his memorial services on a tear-stained napkin. And I promised myself, once I get home, it may stall my career out. I may lose friends. I may lose the confidence in my organization talking about depression and hypervigilance, but it's time. And,
Yeah.
and it's what happened. I started to talk more.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. And I think sometimes, like, you know, this podcast has an explicit rating, so we can say whatever we want. But I think some of the most beautiful things in our life come from when we reach a point where we're just like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Like, I need to take action. I need to do something. I need to make a change. And the loss of your friend, within like a less than, a 7-year period,
Right.
from your daughter's mum, like, that's a lot of grief. It's a lot of compounded grief for you to have to deal with and struggle through. So the fact that you have, grown this wonderful, beautiful thing out of it, it's very commendable, because a lot of people will drown in their grief.
Yeah, and the thing I try to get across to people now is I'm nobody special. It's going to happen to you. Along your career, you're going to have loss, whether it's
Yeah.
marriages, whether it's financial, whether it's your health, whether it's demoted. Something outside the yellow tape is going to hurt you. But if you have your life intact outside the yellow tape, mentally, emotionally, socially, spiritually, financially, you're trying to lean into those areas, you're going to be better than I was when something does happen, because something
Yeah.
is going to happen. I'm not the
Yeah.
only person on this earth that has suffered these losses. I stand in lines at conferences and shake the hands of people who tell me their story, and I think to myself, oh my goodness, you lost your
Mm.
whole family in a car crash,
Mm.
and here you are as a firefighter telling me this. So
Yeah.
I am not a victim, and I'm not the only person telling these sad stories, but I truly believe, and I know that it's working through Operation Yellow Tape. If you own it and you hit it head on and you put these proactive practices into your life, when things do happen, because they are, you're going to respond better. You're going to respond healthier. Is it going to hurt? Yeah. Is it going to alter your life? Yeah. Is it going to cause disruption? Yeah. But you're going to handle them better than if you're not prepared for them at all. And preparing is the key to this game we're in with emergency services, dispatchers, ECC, corrections, police, fire, military, all of us. We see so much stuff, and I just wanted to get across to the listeners that I'm not here just telling my sad Sue story. If you truly, you're going to have things happen. There's no way around it. I can promise you that. Just like we don't know if we're going to run a fire, but I can promise you mentally, you're going to feel these jobs, and you've got to take it serious, and you've got to know things are going to happen, and you've got to know that there's people. I worried so much about coming out and telling people that I was depressed because I was a leader, and would they ever want to crawl down a smoky hallway with me again? Would I lose that Mayday instructor guy who I am? You know what happened when I came out?
I
You
can
know,
imagine.
nothing. You
Mm.
know, nothing but support. There was maybe some people kind of rolled their eyes and said, but when I came out from the darkness, ladies and gents who are listening, it was freeing, and nothing
Yeah.
scary happened. I wasn't thrown into this, cave and thrown away. I was embraced, and more and more and more and more and more people came out.
Yeah.
More and more people approached me, chief level people, saying, man, I am struggling too. My marriage is in disaster. My health is
Yeah.
in disaster. So I want to get that point across. You sit back and you worry, what's going to happen when I come forward? The true people who are in your life, the ones who love you, the folks who you have around you, they're going nowhere. They're going to get closer. So
Yeah.
that's the thing to remember, that for 7 years, I decided I can't come forward because what's going to happen if I do? Well, nothing
Yeah.
but goodness happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's awesome that was the response that you got. And that's exactly how it should be. And the fear, I think, is normal and natural, because it's also just exposing a part of yourself that either A, you hadn't before, and B, we're not always encouraged to. But you said something at like the very start of when you sort of were explaining that, and you were like, I know, like, I'm not someone special. And I think that that's actually like the most important part. It's not the fact that you're not someone special, but you are like the everyman. You literally represent like every, 20 plus year firefighter or, first responder veteran who has seen their fair share of trauma, has endured, their fair share and probably more so of, personal loss and grief. And you're still fucking standing.
Thank you.
And you know what I mean? I think it means that people can see themselves in you. And I think that hits harder. It's like, they're not just some celebrity or, a sporting star or anything like you're saying. Like, people can see themselves in you. They can see their story in your story. And I think that is what makes it so powerful in the end.
Yeah, I'm a believer that all of our stories can become someone's survival guide. I don't know who said that, but maybe
I
no one
like
said it.
that.
I don't know, but a person's story became my survival guide. And every day I read somebody's story about how they overcame something, and I take a little piece of it. But I live my speaking life by that. I want my story not to make you feel sorry for me and to make me a victim, or I'm not a victim. I'm a good guy that's had bad things happen like us all. But we have to know that your story can save your life and it can save other people's lives. You just have to be courageous enough and strong enough and confident enough to start talking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's sort of the best example of post-traumatic growth is that you've taken everything, that you have sort of gone through, and not in like you're saying, not in like the, oh, poor me sort of victim way, but it's like, yeah, like fucking tough shit's happened. And this is what I've put everything into. And I think that's remarkable. And like you're saying, that really the core message of like everything you talk about, it's just building resilience. Like, as first responders, we have to be naturally resilient. Otherwise we're just not going to survive in the job. But it doesn't mean that we can't continue to grow that mental fortitude and that resilience and just keep making it stronger and better and more proactive and preventative. So I think that's great.
Thank you.
And you, like I mentioned at the beginning, you decided to retire in April of this year, 2024. Talk to me about, what sort of prompted that decision, or, where your head was at for you to kind of pull up stumps, because it, sounds like you just, you love your job.
Yeah, I was just, they say when you know, and when you're ready, you're ready.
Yeah.
And for me, nearly 22 years was enough.
Yeah.
I had started Operation Yellow Tape organization, working a lot with Jason Redmond in Chesapeake, Virginia. And, I had just, to be honest, my bucket was full.
Yeah.
I was getting to the point where I was that's what I want people to understand. People think they're stuck on this 25 year, 30 year, 20 year. No, you got to look after yourself. And yeah, I understand everyone needs certain money mile markers. But for me, I was to a point where I was over it all. Like I didn't want to hear about it's bad to say this, but I was tired of hearing about the trauma. I was tired of going to meetings and learning about everything happening and how my bucket was full. And
Yeah.
I woke up one morning and I thought to myself, I'm going to start working towards this. It took about 3 months to actually, pull the hammer and get everything in line. But I think for me, it was just, I'd always had 20 years on my heart. I wanted to do 20 and out and do something more. I still wanted to be kind of young out of this job. I see so many men and women who push it to age 55 and 57 and they retire and they can barely walk on the beach. I wanted to travel a little bit and do some things. But if I'm real honest with myself, I was over so much of the pain and the stuff we see with this job.
Yeah.
I'm proud of my career, and I did good things with strong men and women on my team, and we made an impact. And I will forever fight for the fire service and for emergency services. But I knew for me to be healthy, and to continue on and to be the best version of me for whatever time I have left, I
Mm-hmm.
have to remove myself from the fire service and go
Yeah.
into a different chapter and start helping people who are in this lane, who are probably right where I was during my 7-year struggle, looking me in the face and smiling, all the
Mm.
while going home and being in complete misery. So
Yeah.
that was kind of the driving factor. Was I wanted to get out in front of people more and have a little more influence on helping people I wanted them to make 20 years. I want them to last 25 years. But you
Yeah.
have to, in my opinion, there's a few things you have to work on in your life to get to that 20-year mark, get to that 25-year mark. And when it's your time to go, financially get yourself ready, and it's okay. You're not letting anybody down. Um, People get stuck chasing Leo. They get stuck
Mm.
chasing those 5%. They get
Yeah.
stuck chasing all these things. Well, you need to chase yourself in your own life and do what makes you happy as long as you can make that transition out,
Yeah.
if you want.
Yeah. No, and I think it's a perfectly understandable and legitimate reason, but I think it also shows like how far you've come in like the last few years. You're saying from like 2020, 4 years later, you are aware and educated and cognizant enough to go, you know what, I'm done. My cup is full, my backpack is heavy. I'm
Mm.
like, and you know, to kind of like rewind like those 4 years to where it sounds like you were in such like a different place. Like I think there should be a lot of pride in that for you, for having that self-awareness to be like, I'm good. I'm all good and I'm done.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I do feel proud with my decision. And I get a lot of folks that ask me, you didn't want to do just 3 more years? I mean, just 3 more years is a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
Just 3 more years of what we do is not
Yeah.
3 more years at Capital One.
No.
I tell everybody that just 3 more years was a long time for me. But no, thank you. I
Yeah.
do feel proud of my entire career.
Yeah.
Everybody I've worked with, I've had amazing teams,
Mm.
and it was time.
Let me ask. So it's been what, April? So sort of, heading towards that 6 month mark.
Hmm.
What I'm really interested to ask is, and you actually sort of gave that visual of like, your cup was full. Is there a part of you or like a part within your body that you've noticed feels different or feels lighter, or just anything sort of that perhaps you were like storing a lot of stress and everything in your body, and now that you've kind of walked away, is there like anywhere in particular where you're like, oh, like there's like a vast difference?
Oh, for sure. I think these jobs, every job, you're under a crazy amount of stress,
Mm,
and I've noticed my sleep has gotten, incredibly better. You
yeah.
and I talked about this before I came on to the podcast in 2002. I still have all my stacks of physicals. In 2002, I was 22 pounds heavier than I am today. So since retiring, I've been able to PT more regularly.
Yeah.
I know they always say you can PT on duty, but you never really get it in sometimes. But my sleep has been better. My stress level is definitely lower. My PT has been better.
Hmm.
And just the overall, I hate to say this, but I'm just happier. I feel fulfilled. I think you can I think you can have two chapters of a life, of a career. I've had three now. I mean, I'm on graphic design, firefighting, and now I'm on career three. And
Yeah.
I think you can do that. You're not just a
Mm,
firefighter. You're not just a police officer. You're not just a detective. You're not just a nurse or a teacher or a corrections officer. You can be so much more. And I know a lot of men right now and women who are not happy in the fire service. They want to leave it, and they don't know how, and they're scared and what to
mm,
do now. And their identity is nothing but being a firefighter. And I completely get that, because I have
mm.
moments where I went to a retirement party last night, um, for a chief who retired after 40 years. He just retired. I mean, one of the
Yeah.
best chiefs I've ever, Chief Vince Urquhart, and give you a shout. But man, I got there with all my brothers and sisters. I'm like, I miss this, you know. But then I don't miss the 1:00 in the morning call, the 3:30 in the morning call, the 5 o'clock. I don't miss all the other stuff, but it made me last night. Man, I missed these folks being around this humor back and forth.
Yeah.
But no, I've noticed a lot of great changes. And I had a lot of great changes as I was leaving anyway, because I started to invest in myself in 2020. But you will see as you transition out, your sleep will get better, your routine will change. It's weird not uh, having this uniform on every single day of your life. I noticed I didn't have as many clothes as I needed. Because I've been in a uniform for 22 years. It's like, I don't have a lot of clothes. A lot of t-shirts, not a lot of clothes.
No, but I think that it's really important to hear too, like that you can have these like different parts, different careers, different ideations of yourself, and similarly, like you know, like I left, you know, my policing career unexpectedly after like 9 years. I've been a mum for like, you know, better part of like the last decade, and then at 39, I think I was 38 when I started. I just turned 40, but like now I'm studying to, you know, become a therapist to treat first responders. So it's like, this is like my next career, you know, and it's going to take a long time to get there. But, you know, I'm on the path, and that's the important thing. But I think we can often, pigeonhole ourselves and have that tunnel vision of like, well, this is all I know.
Yeah.
And I was 30 years old when I moved here, or 31, and I was shit scared because I'm like, I'm in my like early 30s. I don't know what to do with my life. Like, what am I going to do from here? And, you know, being a mum's like taken up a lot of that, but I kind of have just always wanted to, I want my kids to see more of me than that.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I feel like I'm showing them now, and will continue to show them sort of down the track. But I think you're sort of, you know, there's always going to be like that adjustment period, but you really seem to be embracing this new side of you.
Yeah. And thank you for doing what you're about to do and what you're working towards, because as first responders, we really need people as counseling and therapy that have been in the boots before, you know, so it's really validating to know if I'm talking to you, you understand the smells and the calls, and you're married to a firefighter. So talking to you is not like calling EAP and someone answering the phone who doesn't know what they're talking about. But going back, you got to be very cautious. I never made the job my identity. I was very serious about the profession. Like you'll see my Instagram. I'll post fire trucks. I love this profession, but I was very cautious. I knew I was Kenny Mitchell, not just a firefighter, not just a lieutenant. I didn't make this job my identity. I had hobbies out of here. I didn't consume myself with writing articles constantly and every single class being at, and FDIC this and FDIC that and chief conference. I didn't want it to be my identity, because I knew, like everything in life, one day this too will end. And I have to have me and the folks around me, my family, are going to be the ones left. Unfortunately, it won't be your brothers and sisters at the coffee table at the very end. It will be those in your home with you, those who have been with you from the beginning. And not making these jobs your identity is very, very, very important. It's hard for us to do, because it's a big profession. It's looked at, everybody's a hero in the TV shows, and I just think sometimes that's why I love talking to non-first responders. I've been hired a lot lately to talk to non-first responders, to explain to them what we do. This is not like Ladder 49. This is not like me. This is not Chicago, man. Being married to one of us is not what you might think it would be. Maybe we were on the calendar, but no, being married to one of us is not easy. It is not what you see on television. And please, this is how we just education. You know, it's a big part of my speaking these days.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because it's unique in the sense that most people, like you're saying, you know, most people working in an office, they don't have to think on a daily basis that the people that are around them on shift, they might have to put their life in their hands. So it
Right.
really forges those bonds and does make it unique. But like you're saying, that slippery slope of making it your identity. And it is sort of, and I probably definitely like fell into that trap as a cop.
Oh yeah.
But it's something that I really sort of value and respect and see in my husband. And he joined like later, like he's, what is he now? I think he's 54. He'll be 55 later in the year. So, and he joined in his like early 30s or something like that. But it's his job and he takes it very seriously. And as a captain, a lot more responsibility, and upgraded to deputy. So, you know, can be in charge of like half the city on, you know, a lot of shifts. And and like you're saying, it's different and it's a lot, but it's not the only thing about him. And he is so focused on his family and in particular, like our boys. And it is like, it's a easy trap to fall into, but you know, good when you don't.
Yeah. It's been nice. You know, we've come a long ways with mental health awareness, but I do think that you always hear the firefighters say that the chief officers, the captains, the deputies, they don't care about us. And I don't think that's the case. I just think sometimes the chiefs don't know what to do. And I speak to those folks a lot, and that's what Operation Yellow Tape does, is I come to your organization and I speak to the folks, because it's very hard for me to hear when I go to these conferences, and everybody always tells me, yeah, there's 3 or 4 people on my mind who, if they took their life, I wouldn't be surprised. Well, that's a problem. That's a problem. And as a chief officer, as a training officer, as a deputy, you want to have people out to your organization to deliver training to those people. Get those folks in those rooms. Now, I can close my eyes too, and I can think of some men and women who have struggled very hard over the last 20 years of my career. And if I got the phone call that they took their life, I would not be surprised either. However, I have invested time in them. I've invested training in them. But to sit back and to say that you can close your eyes and you can see that person doing that, well, that's not enough, you know. But I think sometimes these folks don't know what to do. They don't know who to reach out to, because it's because you're a chief officer, it's because you're a deputy,
You
it's
don't have all
because
the answers.
you might not know what to do. So I'm hoping we're turning the curve on people getting out to your organization and helping you make those steps, helping you get those folks in those rooms. Because let me tell you, I've been on the other end of it. And when someone takes their life in your organization, it's a ripple effect, and everybody hurts because of it. And could we have prevented it? I don't know. But all of us, every firefighter, every lieutenant, every officer can close their eyes and see people who are struggling and think, well, if they took their life, I wouldn't have been surprised. That's not good enough. You know, we have to do classes. We have to get them in front of people who can speak and to talk about some of the problems that they're facing, to maybe, hopefully, catch them. So I'm kind of talking out both sides of my mouth, because I get tired of hearing the firefighters say the chiefs don't care about us, because I believe they do. But on the other side of my mouth, I think sometimes the chiefs and deputies don't know what to do. Well, seek out training. I mean, you know, fire departments don't have a problem spending money on foam training, RIT training, Mayday training, everything in the world, but we lack the training on the brain, the muscle we use the most, which is our brains. And this is how I feel about that.
Well, yeah, and thank you for sharing your opinion on it. But I guess like, and you know, I'm not in that world, so maybe I look at it differently. But like, my response back to them would be like, okay, so you wouldn't be surprised. How many of like those 3 have you fucking pulled into your office and said, hey mate, like I just want to check in, are you doing okay? Or like have a word to their lieutenant or have a word to their captain. Like there is, you know, what do they say, like the responsibility, something like weighs the crown or something like that. Like it's, you know, and yes, thank you. But it's also like, you're also you're a fucking human.
Yeah.
If you are sensing that vibe from someone, Jesus Christ.
And let me tell you, if you close your eyes and you can picture just 6 or 3, let me tell you what, this organization has 550 people. there are hundreds that feel that way. So what you do is mandatory training. It's like we do mandatory CPR insert, mandatory ALS, mandatory this, mandatory in-services. You have mandatory mental health awareness training for your organization one time a year. You bring a counselor in, you bring a therapist in. It doesn't have to be long. You bring in an hour of the year, 365. You bring in that's what you do, because if you think it's just 3 people, you need to wake up. There's hundreds of men and women in your organization who are right there who you don't even know. Nobody suspected this guy right here. He wasn't on your radar of someone who, when you took their life, you would be like, oh, I saw that coming. No one saw this coming. So just like the in-services, just like CPR research, just like ALS and BLS research, all the stuff we have to do, target solutions, it goes on and on and on. Find the time, chief officers, find the time to have somebody come out to your organization, no matter who that is, and give your folks some mental health training. So you're not sitting back at a funeral talking great about this guy who you knew it was coming. Fires me up, man.
Yeah, no, and understandably so. And I think especially in our community, it's more often than not, it's not like they're saying, oh, like there's 3 blokes who, you know, I wouldn't be surprised. It's normally not them. It's normally the ones that you least suspect that wear that mask so strategically well that you have no fucking idea. So that's frustrating.
Had I taken my life between 2013 and 2020, it would have been the shock of all shocks. People would have been floored because I was the guy who was smiling, making hair jokes, messing with people, dad, coaching, all these things. Did I have some outside signs? Probably people saw some irritability and some things, but I still would have been that guy where people were like, whoa, unbelievable. I'd have been living on somebody's wrist. So yeah, if you think it's just 3 or 4 people in an organization of hundreds, you're wrong.
No, definitely. And it's something that I sort of think about a lot too, like building a rapport with a therapist. Like you're saying, the annual wellness checks, you don't have to go in and bare your soul, but even if you just go in and shoot the shit for half an hour, you're building a rapport with a mental health clinician. And it means that if you do find yourself in crisis, you already have established that, oh, okay, I already know that person. They seem all right. I'll go talk to her. I think that is, I don't think you can put a price on that, you know. But you know, we've mentioned a lot of it sort of, you know, throughout our conversation, but Operation Yellow Tape, now that you have your you know, basically full-time hours to be able to devote to it, tell me about all of the parts and the resources and everything that it encompasses, and equally tell us about the annual conference that you've got coming up, number 3, I believe, for you guys.
I'll try to briefly describe it. You know, Operation Yellow Tape's mission is to provide quality resources, education, and community and awareness for first responder and their family mental health, mental health signs and symptoms. My vision that I had for this whole thing is that sometimes people don't know where to start. They don't know how to even go about. I cannot believe the emails that I get that folks don't even know where to start with finding a therapist. So they reach out to Operation Yellow Tape, and we help them bridge that gap. There's 4 or 5 therapists that I work with. There's folks who want to lose weight. We help them get into a gym. There are folks in fire departments who their organization doesn't offer physicals. If you're not getting a physical once a year, if you're not getting your blood work done, if you're not testing your testosterone once a year, low T mimics depression. So Operation Yellow Tape helps men and women get physicals, because sometimes you think you have depression, but actually, like me, you have low T. And I had low T for many years, in the 200s. It would have been in the thousands for a man like my age. But part of the mission is bringing together the community. I had this vision in 2022 of having a conference, and I wanted to see what it would look like. It was about 44 people of all different careers and occupations and ages. And then last year we had close to 70. This year we're pushing 130.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's just the Operation Yellow Tape Conference number 3, September 14th. It is just free to you, but we have a DJ, we have raffles, we have people on stage talking about testosterone replacement therapy, we have a counselor talking, we have folks giving information on personal training. I share a little bit of the Operation Yellow Tape vision and mission. We have sponsors in the back. We have swag all over the place. Operation Yellow Tape t-shirts for sale, and the money again goes towards helping me continue to speak, me continue to go to these places I want to go to, and putting people in gyms, physicals, just overall mental and physical wellness for the firefighter and their families. Because I'm telling you, the families take this ride right along with you. They don't know who they're
100%.
getting in the mornings. They don't know who they're dealing with, and they don't know what mood you're going to be in. They don't know
Nope.
how quick you're going to go from happy to depressed. And the more you educate that family, the more you educate the spouses and the girlfriends, boyfriends, uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews, the more you educate these folks, the better they are at helping us have a better relationship with you. And I am finding incredible success with OYT, with families reaching out to me. I went out and spoke with a group of wives a few weeks ago, and it was amazing what they didn't know about their first responder husband of 10 years. You know, we don't always want to walk in the front door and instantly be bombarded with going to the amusement park. We need some time at sometimes, and you shouldn't have to walk on eggshells. So we've got to mend those relationships, because sometimes in this profession, sometimes and not sometimes, all the time, we change and our spouse, our loved ones don't. They don't deal with the sleep issues. They don't deal with the stress at work, the promotions, demotions, the sometimes the brother fucking that happens on these jobs. It is what it is. Some firefighters can be absolutely horrendous to each other. I don't care what nobody wants to say. They can be horrible to each other. So this job is really stressful. We like to educate the families on this job. This isn't about putting wet stuff on the red stuff. There is administrative duties, there is hiring, there is all types of training and all types of promotional processes you have to jump through. There's a lot that happens. And that's OIT's mission. It is to globally educate the community and the families and the firefighters and emergency services and everybody on how do we all understand this job that so many people say is a job few understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really could not be happier to hear about how much you are educating the partners and the spouses, because I think it's such a significant piece of the puzzle that I don't think is utilized in the way that it could be and the way that it should be. And you know, I'm very much like I've you know, seen both sides of that coin, and I live that as my reality. And so it's kind of just, I guess, like sheer luck that I happen to be a former first responder, and now I'm interested in psychology and studying it. So I have an awareness, but it's like, why are we not teaching them, like, you know, your partner is going to be exposed to X amount of like critical incidents and traumatic incidents over, you know, it's like 300 to 400 over a 20-year career.
Yeah.
You know, this is like the list of the things that they are at risk of suffering from. Like, you know, this is what you need to be mindful of. You guys have to have an open channel of communication when no one's getting defensive, but it's like, hey, are you just tired? Did you have a rough shift? Or is something else going on? Because like, this is what I'm observing, and you need to be able to have that open conversation. And spouses are a resource.
Yes.
We see them, like, yes, blokes and chicks at the firehouse. Yeah, you guys spend a shit ton of time with them too, and nothing takes away from that. But we see them every day. We sometimes know them before they join the job. We see how they interact with their children. We see their short fuse. We see so many different aspects. We see how little they sleep, you know, and I think we are just this underutilized resource that we really could be contributing to that overall piece of the mental health and wellness of our loved ones. And I love when you talk about, you know, the differences between like the inside and outside of Operation Yellow Tape, because realistically, unless there's like some kind of symbiotic connection and relationship that, like, if one's not going right, well, then the other one's not going to be going right either.
Right.
So to have that level of awareness, like, I'm really thankful that your organization is out there doing that, because I don't think it's done enough.
Yeah, a lot of people relate to the inside the yellow tape and the outside. The inside being, like we talked about, what your job is and what my job is, and the postal office and all these jobs. But it's the outside that we all get. I don't care what profession you have. The outside, watching a family member die, being the caregiver, just all the things we mentioned before: divorces, child custody battles. It's the hardest thing in the world to be the caregiver of a parent that's dying. Outside the yellow tape, when you look at the studies of these men and women who have taken their lives, from ECC, dispatchers, firefighters, police, military, it's always usually something outside of their job that has spearheaded them into this horrible direction. For me, it was. For Tom, it was. Is always something. We do a pretty good job of handling the job, not handling it well, but you throw that outside stuff in, raising children, families that are blended, marriage. It's just a recipe for disaster. It's the perfect storm. And I speak on it regularly, and people can relate to that. It's outside yellow tape. Everybody has one. Every profession has one. And thank you for saying that. I am proud of the work we're doing and the folks who are helping me. And I'm not big enough to a point to have full-time staff, so it is me with some volunteers, but we are getting a lot of things done, and we've made a lot of progress in a short few years with this thing, and I'm not stopping. It's got a reach in Chicago, a heavy presence in Virginia, and we're coming for you.
No, and I absolutely love it, and I think it's just not talked about enough how crucial the communication needs to be to have a functional relationship with a first responder.
Yeah.
And it's stuff that you don't even think to, like, talk about, but like you're saying, it's like, we don't always know what our partner needs, because it's going to depend on what kind of night they've had, what kind of shift they've had. So it's that kind of thing of, like, what do you want from me? What do you need from me? Yeah. Do you need that space? Like, go take a half-hour drive on your way home. Like, but when there's a lack of communication, that breeds resentment, and resentment is just toxic to relationships, because it builds and builds and builds until there's just this, like, vast void between the two of you, and sometimes that can't be penetrated.
It's sometimes it's you cannot repair it. The distance gets so thick. It
does.
The one thing too that spouses don't always understand, and we don't always understand, as a first responder, when you're on duty and you've got a dying parent, or you got a child that's causing an issue, and you're on the phone with insurance companies and you're running these calls. I mean, there's so much that's happening, and we're nursing a shoulder surgery and shoulder injuries, and we just don't share those things. We just come home, and I can remember times coming home being so exhausted and so angry and laying in the bed and not wanting to go to this cookout. And when I finally get to the cookout, I'm slapping high fives. There's my brother, got a cigar in my mouth. I'm talking about, that call last night was amazing, man. I can't believe that fire we ran. But 4 hours before that, I was too tired to talk to you. I wouldn't even sit outside on the porch. I was angry, didn't want to come to this cookout. And now you look over at me, Erin, my wife looks over. Well, there's Kenny, smiling, smoking a cigar, slapping high fives with his boys. But 2 hours ago, he was a complete asshole to me. We just don't, and I just didn't. We didn't do a good job, and we still don't to this day. And again, that's what Operation Yellow Tape does. A lot of these organizations, when I'm called in to speak and to present, is I try my best to deliver a 2 to 4 hour presentation, and you'll leave there and you're going to know, what steps can I take right now to help get things back on track? Because sometimes people just don't know. They get so used to this rut: go to work, come home, go to work, come home, cut the grass, go to work, go hug, and you've got to break free of all those things and have healthy practices outside Yellow Tape and inside.
Yeah, very much so. And now is, like, people wanting to come to the conference? Is that still open? Is it closed? What's the deal if someone's interested in attending?
It is still open. Luckily, I say luckily. Last year we had a couple no-shows, so I closed registration, and the folks didn't even call to tell me. So I made it very, very clear this year. If you're going to not come, you're going to let me know. So, so we've had a few folks who have had to change some plans. So yeah, we do have registration open still. You can go to kennymitchelljr.com and sign up. It's right here in Chesterfield if you're local. It's free. Starts at 10 a.m. So yeah, we do have spots. I'm going to make spots for the folks that show up. Going to be a great catered lunch. We're going to have speakers. But no, to answer your question, yes, it is. Registration is still open.
All right, cool. I will pop the link in the show notes. So if anyone is interested, they can reach out to Kenny to either attend the Operation Yellow Tape conference, or alternatively, is your website the best way to get in contact with you if someone's heard this and is like, man, he's speaking my language, I want him to come and either talk to my first responder organization or even like a private organization, like you were saying. You know, it's not just about the first responder community, it's about helping everyone. Is that the best way to get in contact with you?
Yes. KennyMitchellJr.com is where to reach out to me. Again, you just mentioned it. I just had Allstate hire me again to come out and speak to their non-first responders. So yeah, people reach out on the website. There's a place you can go to, it says book Kenny for speaking. But more so, you know, if you're interested in joining my newsletter, I do have a newsletter that comes out every single Monday. You can go to kennymitchelljr.com and sign up for that. It just takes your name and an email. And sometimes we just need to have a positive start to Monday. You know, get those feet on the floor and get out the front door. And my newsletter just consists of a little bit about me, a little bit about how I want you to go through your week, get some sunshine, put that phone away, drink some more water. So my newsletter is really important to me. It's free to you too. So if you want to join my newsletter, just same website, sign up, throw your name and a good email on there. It's not soliciting anything. It's not selling cars. It's just a good word. And I like newsletters like that. So that's strong. And yeah, that's the best way for me is my website and my IG too. You know, if you want to give me a follow on my IG, Kenny Mitchell Fire, I'd appreciate it. I do a lot of videos. Some are fun, some are serious.
You do a lot of lives too. You often like jump on and do lives.
I do a lot of lives. I'm a little bit shadow banned right now. I don't know why. I'm kind of shadow banned. I don't talk religion. I don't talk politics. I don't talk anger. I don't talk gender. I don't talk anything that makes people mad at each other. So I don't know why I'm shadow banned a little bit. So I've got nearly 4,000 followers, but I'm shadow banned sometimes, so I can't go live. But I do love going live and people jumping on. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, I will put all of the links to all of Kenny's socials and website and all that kind of thing, so people can jump on and follow and interact and sign up for his email subscription that comes out every Monday. And I think everything you're doing is so beneficial, and I'm really appreciative that, you know, you're out there sort of spreading that message. And if you ever find yourself heading a little further north up into the Boston area, please give me a shout out, because
I hope so. I've got some Boston support.
With you, really.
Yeah, I did a Boston. It was a group of lawyers. I did a speaking engagement, a virtual one for them a few months ago, and they're thinking about having me come out in person. So.
That'd be awesome.
I'll let you know.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
I would really, really love that. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we sort of start to wrap it up?
No, I just appreciate it so much, and I always end like I always end. You know, people need to know that there are people out there that care, and you got to give them a chance. Let somebody hear you. Let somebody see you. You would be shocked to know how people feel like you feel. So I love to end all these with just that. If that's you right now, make today the last day that you suffer and reach out, because you would be shocked at people who feel like you feel, and give them a chance to hear you and to see you. And it's time to feel good again. Make today the end of it.
Yeah, no, I love that, and thank you for sharing that. And I think you're right in the sense that there are so many resources out there now that,
Yes.
you know, I sort of tend to look at it like, I think like mental health and wellness for the first responder community, it's almost on like a bit of a continuum. You've got kind of, speaking to a friend or a spouse, you've got your peer support, you've got the CISM crew, you've got sort of like, I do wellness coaching for first responders. I know you do coaching for first responders too. And then you've got, heading into like the clinician realm, there is so much support available.
Oh,
There's
yes.
going to be something out there for you. So no matter what it is, and even if the first person you reach out to isn't the right fit, please, pursue it, because it's worth it, and we want you around.
Yes.
100%. Kenny, we like to finish off these podcast episodes by asking our guests 2 questions. And so it comes from the name of the podcast, which is I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. And it's, stems from my belief that obviously our professions, we are exposed to a lot of the darkness that humanity has to offer up in this world, unfortunately, sometimes. And so the first question that I like to ask is, what do you do to be able to hold space for your darkness?
I think what I do is I show myself some grace. I try to sweat and lift heavy things. I try to move my body and do things. But most importantly, is I try to show myself grace that, Kenny, no matter what you do and no matter what resources you have, you're going to have hard days. Mentally and emotionally, you're going to have days that you feel hurt for no reason, you feel depressed for no reason, you feel angry because of what has happened inside and outside the yellow tape. And take a breath and to know that it's not weak, and give yourself some grace that you spent 22 years doing a very hard job with some very tough men and women, and you saw some very bad things outside the yellow tape. So for me, I have to show myself grace. I have to not get down on myself and close up and isolate. And that's kind of what I do. I reflect back and I take a peek at some of these journals and I think, how did you get through all of this, man? You're stronger than you ever could imagine. Remember how strong you are. And that's what I do.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I think that grace and self-compassion is very underrated. And the second question that I ask is, what can someone do in supporting you to hold space for that darkness?
I listened to all your episodes and I've heard you say that, ask that, and I've always wondered how I was going to respond to that. And honestly, I had to just go from what works for me, of course, but it's somebody just listening and being able to not solve a problem for me or not have a solution, but sometimes that person just sitting across from that chair and just hearing what I'm saying, and maybe just not having even a response. Understanding that sometimes I need space. Sometimes I am going to be quiet, and I'm not mad about anything. I'm just, this job has hurt me. I have invisible injuries, and it comes across as, you're mad, you're quiet. Let's just talk. I'm not mad. I just need to be by myself. I've had friends lately. I travel a lot, and I have to always be on a lot. And I've had people invite me to their house, and they offered me their spare bedroom. And it happened it was amazing. I was able to just sit in this person's living room and just talk to them, and they were just listening. And then afterwards, I showered and just didn't have to worry about a hotel and just slept in a quiet place. And I was off for a while. So allowing me to be off and just listening. I used to think this job requires fire service. We have a problem and we instantly take care of it right now. And that bleeds over into your outside of your yellow tape. You think everything has to be fixed right now, today, this second, because we are fixers in the fire service. When you're in your civilian life and your personal life outside the uniform, it's not going to get fixed overnight. It's not going to get fixed immediately. So just people understanding that as well, that you don't need to give me a fix. Sometimes I just need to hear a soft voice say, I hear you. sitting here beside you.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. And it's really, you kind of just pinpointed the whole reason of this and why I named it what I named it. I will hold space for your darkness.
It's a powerful name. It's a powerful podcast name. When I first saw it come across, when I started talking to you, I was like, whoa, that's powerful. It is. I loved it.
It's when I was considering sort of, taking the plunge and doing it, because I don't like my own voice and or the sound of my voice, and I hate seeing myself on video. So it's basically just like exposure therapy that I torture myself with. But it's I just sort of started thinking, I'm like, it was the only thing that I thought of that was like, that's it. So
well, you have to knock out those limiting self-beliefs, because your voice is soothing. You unlike me, I have a face made for radio. You have a face for video.
I don't know about that,
but I tell everybody, I do podcasts a lot. Don't let the algorithms and the downloads and whatever you get else you think might not be going. People are hearing you. People are listening, and take the approach of one person. If one person hears this today and decides to hear you and listen to what you've said and what I've said with you, then that's accomplishment. That's the win. A lot of podcasters, including myself, get caught up in, oh man, this one only had this many downloads. This one only had this many. No, did you have one? And that's a goal that seems a little light, but I can tell you what, one person can go on to affect a whole lot of people, a whole lot of family, and a whole lot of life. So keep doing what you're doing. You're doing amazing stuff, and I've had such a great time talking to you.
No, that's really kind of you to say, and yeah, I really appreciate your time and just your authenticity and your openness in sharing everything with us today, because I think it's a really valuable message that you're putting out there, and equally I think you're helping a lot of people. So I wish you all the best going forward. I wish you all the best with your conference coming up. Like I said, I'll pop all of Kenny's contact details in the show notes, and I look forward to seeing how it goes.
Thank you so much. It's been a blast.
No worries. Thanks for your time, Kenny.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. I've been your host, Erin Jane. And as always, let me listen in a way you've never been heard. Cheers.